You're in the water loop.
Waterloop is a nonprofit media outlet made possible in part by a grant from Springpoint Partners. This is Waterloop episode number 133, A Mindset of Public Service. The water industry functions better when the workforce has a diverse blend of backgrounds and perspectives. This includes having individuals that bring experience in public administration and a mindset of service to others. In this episode, Amanda Jones, founder of Women in Water, discusses how her journey in government and focus on helping people were beneficial at the water department in Marana, Arizona. Amanda talks about applying public administration skills at a water utility, making customer service more about assisting the community, why affordability is a forefront issue, and launching an organization to support women in water.
You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis, joined for this episode by Amanda Jones, founder of Women in Water. Amanda, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Travis. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of conversation beforehand and a couple weeks ago, and so I'm excited to hear about your journey and then share it with other people. Got a lot of great stories and experiences and perspective. One of the things that we talk about in water all the time, this kind of question is like, did you find water or did water find you? And I think I was pretty struck by your story that it seems that water found you.
Totally.
But I think that everything you did before water found you helped you become really impactful in water. And I'd love to hear about your journey and why I think that's the case.
Sure. It's a bit of a circuitous journey to get to the water world for sure. But you're absolutely right. I fell into waters, never where I thought I was going to be. When I was a little kid, I was sure I wanted to be president of the United States. I quickly grew out of that. But I knew that government was the place for me. I knew that I wanted to find a way to be impactful in my communities. And then it took me some years through undergraduate and graduate programs to figure out which place I wanted to be. And I landed in local government after I finished a study abroad in living in Russia for a little while and realizing that the international world was not where I wanted to be. But I knew I still wanted to make an impact. And there's no better impact than local government, being able to see the pothole you repaired, being able to make sure you see the sidewalks installed in a neighborhood that didn't have them, and turning their water on and off is no more direct than impact than that. So I've been pretty excited to see how to find that impact throughout my journey. But water is always going to be in my heart and where I will see myself moving forward, because you cannot be impactful without talking about water. People need it every day. I think the pandemic was a very big eye-opener for folks of the need of water. We always talk about how we get ignored a lot of the time until something doesn't happen, right? The water doesn't turn on, there's something smelly or brown or whatever the case may be. But really having the conversation of we need to keep our hands clean, we need to be able to wash clothing so that we can stay healthy, was kind of a silver lining or a bittersweet moment for the water utilities, I think, to say, hey, we are as impactful as anyone else in the public health world. And I loved being on the front lines of that. So I landed in the water department in 2014, was there for about 8 years, and I'm going to continue on that journey wherever it takes me in the water world.
Yeah. So that transition time, what were you doing in government before you specifically went into water, and where were you?
Yeah, so I worked for the town of Marana, which is northwest of the city of Tucson in southern Arizona. I was snatched up gratefully right out of graduate school to work in the town manager's office. I was there for about 2.5 years and really figured out how to talk to the community, engage with the community, was able to establish, in conjunction with the town manager and deputy, a new citizen advisory group. So really finding ways to hear from the community was one of the first things that I was responsible for. and then just kind of and worked on some strategic planning, and then kind of got plugged into different places across the town where they needed support. So the clerk's office, tech services, and then I stumbled into water because they had some staffing changes and they needed some support. So I, have a background in local government. I have a background in public management, financial management. So I just offered to help, and it struck me how quickly we in the water department had relationships with our community, which is what I was looking for. And again, just being able to have that direct impact of if somebody's water's on or off there's nothing more impactful than that.
Yeah. So how did your experience, in local government, which the department was part of, but in the broader local government entity there, how did that help you work in the water department?
I think there's a lot of really great things you learn when you go to government school, as I jokingly call it,
Government
about
school. I like that. Yeah.
about how you engage with communities, how you think about finances. And we operate a lot of water departments operate as enterprise systems. So essentially all my nonprofit management education was leading me to be a great leader in the financial portion of the water enterprise management. We are not in the business of making money, but we are in the business of providing service. So being able to have that kind of mindset of how we collect money, how we think about rates, how we think about what we really need to operate was something that I really was able to capitalize on when I came over to the water department. And then I think the other is just the general altruistic nature of wanting to be in government. No one goes, there's some adage of no one goes into government for the money, right? So I wanted to be there to support, the community. And, we have a lot of experiences when we're going through our kind of undergraduate and graduate programming, which is where my government bug really stuck, looking at what is best practices, what's process improvement, and all of those things can be tied directly into the water in any industry, really. But we, particularly in water, have such a finite pool of resources, both on the water side especially, but also financial and staff. And so being able to capitalize on how I learned about process improvement, how I was able to bring consensus to groups, all of those kinds of things were directly tied to my government experience, and then was happy to bring that to water because we have a lot of really wonderful people in the community in the water industry, but not a lot of government folks that come from a government background. They may have engineering degrees or finance degrees, but I think my government specific experience really has helped me thrive in the community and find a really special place to help in the sector.
I just want to go back to you calling it government school. And you just talked about things, you learn it working in government that carry over and help in a water department. What do you learn at government school? What's the focus of that stuff that helps you, in working in government and then working in water?
Sure. I first should give a shout out to the University of Arizona, which is where I went to government school. So bear down. So we learned a lot about being good stewards of our residents or ratepayer money. We learn about financial management in a general fund versus enterprise management. A lot of kind of fiscal responsibility type lessons. We also learn a lot about how to engage in the community. How do you talk to folks of all types of backgrounds across your community so that you have that engagement that makes your solution that much stronger? We also have a lot of discussion about process improvement and organizational management. How to get the right people in the right seats on the right bus are all things that we talk about and we engage with, and I certainly use every day in my experience and my current roles. I think the other thing we think a lot about is how we support each other and cross jurisdictionally. So I am usually the only public administrator in a conversation at water events or in my utility, but there's how to talk to engineers, how to talk to contractors, how to talk to customer service staff. I mean, those are all things that we learn so that we can gain consensus as we're trying to establish best practices or new offerings or new programming.
So it's not like the Department of Government school. What is it officially, like Department of Public Administration or something
Yep.
like that, or
Yeah. So I have a master's in public administration
public
from
administration? Okay,
from the School of Government and Public Policy at the University of Arizona.
there we
So if
go.
anyone's
Government
looking for,
school. Government
I
school
love
is so much
government
shorter.
school.
Yeah, it sounds
Totally.
sounds
Yeah.
good. It's what it's about.
I think so.
When we talked before, about what your work was at the water department, you talked a lot about working in customer service,
Mhm.
and taking a stance of helping people. That seems like that's what customer service is, but unfortunately, we know that's not always,
Mhm.
the case. Customer service departments aren't always just focused on that helping, even though it should be.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that not always being the case, and then how you brought that mindset to your work?
Sure. So I think about customer service in two ways. We certainly are there to help any customer that needs assistance for whatever that might be. So that's paying their bill, starting new service, disconnecting service, some of the traditional things that you think about. But customer service is also the voice of your utility. They're the people that are reaching out and talking to your community, talking to your ratepayers every month. We knew people by name, we knew their family, we knew their granddaughter had a baby or whatever those things may be. We are the tie to the community, and I think that gets left behind a lot. And that was again seen in such a huge microscope under in the pandemic. They were frontline folks, just like our operators were out turning valves and making sure the system was running. Our customer service staff was there working hard, making arrangements with customers who had lost their jobs or had lost a loved one. I mean, these are things that are looked over and taken for granted. And something I'm really excited about is I live in the state of Arizona, and we are building a brand new customer service award as a reflection of things that have been seen throughout the pandemic period, and it's long overdue, of course, but it's a way to kind of think about customer service, not just this person on the end of the phone, but somebody who knows the utility inside and out and has that relationship with the customer. There are amazing customer service staff all over the country. If you're interested in joining any of those committees, give me a call. I'm happy to connect you. But it's something that's overlooked, and I'm so excited that it's beginning to be seen in the forefront of the water sector.
Um, One of the big issues you just kind of touched on is affordability, right?
Mhm.
And water bill is a decent bill that comes to a household every month. A lot of water bills are going up as the cost of water rates go up,
Sure.
as and also as just the cost of living overall, goes up. It's not just that
Mhm.
water bills are rising; it's that the cost of living's going up, and we've got even the past couple of years have inflation and all this stuff. Your thoughts on why affordability has become such a forefront issue? Um, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Um, We've talked about affordability for a very long time as a sector. There is a conversation every year, I promise, in every utility across the country about how you're balancing what rates you need to charge versus what service you need to provide. And at the end of the day, we're a cost of service business. We need to collect rates for the needs of our system to ensure we have safe, reliable drinking water, and we take away wastewater and treat it appropriately. So that's the basis of what we talk about. But there are a lot of really creative ways to engage in that affordability conversation. Do you look at different tiered rate structures? Do you look at the way that your volumetric charge versus your flat fee is organized so that the impact to a leak or an unintended water use is not as high? So there's those kinds of things that are operational that we can have a conversation about as a utility, and there are as an industry, and there are a lot of people that are doing that. But we also really need to talk about flexibility. We have standard, rigid, old systems that do not allow for 2 days to pay your bill after their due date without getting disconnected, or understanding that not everybody's economic situation is the same every month, and that hard and fast date isn't reasonable all the time. So those kinds of things are easy to do, and it just has to take some energy and some wherewithal behind it to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let Travis pay on the 10th, even though his bill's due on the 8th, because it's easier for us as a utility to not track somebody down and not disconnect somebody, but also it gives you the goodwill of Travis now being able to maintain that service and not worry about his water bill for 30 days. So there's compassion and some humanity that we can bring into the conversation, that's coupled with that cost of service analysis that we have to do as well. I think there are a lot of really smart people working on this, and I'm happy to even be in the room with them most of the time. But it's something that is certainly at the forefront. It's not going to go away. This is one of the first times ever that there has been federal money allocated for water bill assistance. So looking at the LIWAP program, some of the cities that used some of their CARES money to offset balances that had been accruing when they suspended disconnections, those are all innovative and cool ways that utilities can support those that are really in need.
Yeah, great. Great to talk about some of those kind of current developments in affordability. Not to make it seem like you have a crystal ball that you can just pull out, but where do you think that this kind of affordability, issue goes over the next couple of years? You've got these different federal funds that have kind of come in and help. We've had the pandemic the past 2 years now, and that's still evolving. The sector's looking at this very closely and kind of changing some of their practices. Just kind of like any speculation as to where things might go or what affordability management might look like in a couple years?
Sure. So the attorney training in me says it depends. But I think there's a few things that we can think about for sure. I think the opportunity that has been provided from the LIWAP program, the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, is really exciting. We have to make sure that it is administered appropriately and well. And I think that means all of our state agencies reaching out to utilities, talking to utilities, seeing how they're going to be able to apply those funds in a way that's going to get the direct help that it's intended to. Because if it does work well, the hope is that there's this approved EPA assistance program in the infrastructure bill, but the funding is in other bills and other ways. So ensuring that the LIWAP program is a success can then ensure additional federal funding over time and in perpetuity. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing to think about is we have a lot of money allocated from the current administration for state revolving funds, which means there are low income or low interest borrowing open to utilities, which can reduce the need of increasing rates for capital investment. Certainly you have to pay back debt service, certainly you have to pay for engineering services, but it also alleviates some of those pressures and those levers that cause those rates to increase. So seeing those types of investments at the federal level has to continue. We invest in bridges, we invest in roads, and those things are certainly important, but it's really exciting to be a part of the conversation now that they're investing in water utilities, both in the affordability world and in the infrastructure world, because those two things are tied together. The less you have to raise rates to pay for infrastructure, consent decrees, operational management, the more you have the flexibility to provide affordable rates for your customers.
Yeah, fantastic points. I mentioned from the very beginning that you are the founder of Women in Water, so let's transition to that.
Sure.
Tell me about this organization.
Totally. So I created this in 2020, jokingly because I am selfish and want to hang out with my friends. It was purely in response to feeling isolated in my house, just like we all were for a good portion of 2020 and today. But it's systemic of what I've seen in my 8 years in the industry. I tend to be the only woman in a room a lot of the time. I tend to be the only non-engineer in the room a lot of the time. And I felt overshadowed. I felt like I couldn't use my voice. I felt like I couldn't be represented and heard. And if anything, I'm aggressively friendly and outgoing. And so I wanted to find ways to use those skills to lift up others, to give them a voice, to give them a space to be heard, to feel comfortable, to build a network. So we are not technical in any way other than all of us are connected to the water industry. And it is women with the inclusive language so that anyone who identifies as a woman in the water industry is welcome to join us. We have mostly social and professional development offerings, and we meet twice a month and talk about whatever we want to talk about: books, podcasts, TV. It's a break in our daily grind, so that we can get to know each other, so that I can feel comfortable reaching out to someone I'd never met before in person and asking them some support or some guidance, advice about something that was happening in my professional life. So we really are established to feel that you exist, feel powerful in your existence, to feel like you have the ability and the support behind you to take up space. So you can take the social and connectiveness that we provide at Women in Water into your professional and personal lives, however you feel appropriate.
Oh, that's good stuff. How do you see the water sector changing when it comes to that male-female ratio?
Sure.
It's clear there's still a long way to go. It seems that it has made some strides in recent years. I just kind of would love your take on that.
Totally. I think that you're absolutely right. We have made some strides. We certainly have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg is how many women on the court is enough, and her answer is 9. So I would say as many women as we can in leadership positions is the answer. We have certainly been graduating more women engineers into the water sector than ever before, but we have not seen that transition into women in leadership in the water sector. So I feel like I'm in a position in my career that I now have the responsibility to support anybody coming behind me. So lifting people up, I think we can do that for each other regardless, women, men, non-binary, whatever, in the water industry. We have that responsibility to come and say, come with me, follow me. I'm going to help you do whatever we need to do. So just generally having some allyship across this sector is going to be really helpful. But also just recognizing in the world or in your boardroom, whatever that might be, someone's missing from the table. And just having that awareness is the first step. And I think we're getting much better as an industry of recognizing that and saying, and I think we have a lot of work to do to then identify how we bring them to the table and who's the right person to bring to the table. And I would love to have those conversations with whoever is interested.
Well, as I do these podcasts, I, kind of when they wrap up, I start thinking about the short description that I have to put together and then the title, and the thing that emerged for me from you is like just, this theme of helping and helping people. And you talk about that being in government, you talk about that being at the water department, being in customer service, helping with affordability, helping, women in the water sector lift up. And so that's just letting you know, the preview, that's kind of what, the title of this and the description is going to revolve around. And that's what I enjoy about talking to you and sharing this conversation with others is like, it's great to meet people who are focused on helping others and to share those stories. So I appreciate it so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I don't think there's a better compliment of a way to be described than wanting to help others. So I'm very, very grateful and very humble for that
Awesome.
Title.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. Take care.
Thanks so much, Travis. Have a good one.
Waterloop.
Thank you for listening to this episode. And thanks again to Spring Point Partners for grant funding. Remember, you can support the Waterloop nonprofit media outlet at patreon.com/thewaterloop. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.
Waterloop, Waterloop, Waterloop.